What up, guys? So today I have my buddy's 1993 Civic EG. It is an SI. About 2 weeks ago, me and him went to Lincoln, Nebraska, and picked this car up. The car itself is from California. It was built in California, and the guy in Nebraska just sort of collects clean Hondas, freshens them up, and makes money on them. So on our drive, the car was having some issues, but we thought it was more so related to the K-tuned shifter that the car has. I don't really like the K-tuned shifters, and I more so like the stock ones, but as I drove the car, I would go to put it in fifth, and it wouldn't always go into fifth gear. I was having some weird issues, but I thought, hey, it was just me, because my car, I'm using the stock RSX shifter box. It shifts real smooth. I never miss any gears. So I'm like, okay, this is a billet shifter, different cables, maybe it's just me. But after we brought it back to Wisconsin, he was still having issues, and he calls me and he says, hey, when the car is running, I can't get it into reverse. I have to put it in reverse, turn the car on, and then I can reverse it. So I'm like, oh, that doesn't sound good. It's probably having issues with the clutch. So let me explain to you real quick how I'm diagnosing a bad clutch or throw bearing. All right, so with the car being off, this is the K-tuned adjustable shifter with a lockout. This lockout here being first, second, third, fourth. It locks out fifth and sixth and reverse. Obviously car goes into every gear. Second, third, which was really tough. Fourth, fifth, and then sixth, and then reverse. But if we turn the car on and we try to do that, the main thing to look for is that the car is wanting to move or not. So what I'm saying is, clutch all the way down to the floor. You have the car running, you put it in gear. Let's say you put it in first. The car should not move. This car, when you put it in gear, it will lunge a little bit, which means that the clutch is still grabbing. So let me show you. All right, let's turn this car on. All right, so it's cold start. You see that? It doesn't want to fully go into gear because the clutch or the throw bearing is still is stuck. I believe that it might be stuck on the shaft. But if we put the phone out here and I put it into gear, I don't know if you can tell, but the car moves a little bit. So the problem is even worse when the car is warmed up. So that's how I'm diagnosing it. But also, when you take the car for a ride, the throw bearing will start making noise. So you just go down by the fork, remove the fork. See how much it's shaking? See how much that fork is shaking? That's me putting pressure on the bearing. Bearing is making noise. The clutch master. This is an S2000 one, and whoever installed it obviously did not put a spacer. So let me turn the car off. So if you're gonna run an S2000 clutch master on an EG, on an EK, on an Integra, you have to run a spacer. And most kits come with those spacers, but some people don't know and they just buy the S2000 master and throw it on. When I checked it from the inside, the rod itself, there's brake fluid coming out of it. So that issue might have caused that issue that might be causing the clutch itself. So I got my buddy ordering a new S2000 clutch master with the spacer. We're gonna do the clutch. Both of his axle seals are leaking. I checked that. So we'll do the axle seals as well. And new fluid. That fluid is really, really dark. So this build has been, probably done and, driven around for a while. And nobody really changed anything except the engine oil. I did go around checking all the bolts because, the car's using Hasport mounts. They are pretty stiff. Things rattle around. We race these cars. We have fun with these cars. You got to go around and tighten stuff. Strut tower bolts were loose, the front and the back. I had 2 transmission bolts that were loose. I had the upper control arm bolts were loose. I had the wheels off, and I checked them from the inside. They were loose. So now basically what I'm going to do is diagnosing that is a bad clutch. I'll put the car up in the air and start tearing it apart and take a better look at everything. Now let's put the car up in the air, take the wheels off, and put it on jack stands. To the side. So right now we're just taking apart everything that's on top of the transmission, unplugging all the sensors, of course, taking off the shifter linkage. This car has the heater core lines, so they get in the way, but there's some stuff over here too. Main thing is disconnecting all the sensors, the linkage. A good trick if you don't want to bleed your clutch fluid and you don't want to take off your clutch line, just take off those 2 12mm bolts on the clutch slave cylinder, move it to the side. That way you don't have to empty your brake fluid and then put new fluid in and then bleed it. But always look at your brake fluid first. You can tell how dirty and black ours is. So we're going to be draining the fluid regardless. We're going to be putting a new master cylinder in there anyways. Let's get this mess out. Let's get this, we got to punch this back up. The little lip, we do that for safety. That's a 32mm. Pull that. We'll pull the fork for the coilovers. We'll pull the fork off, pop that axle out, drain the fluid from the transmission, we might as well do the fluid from the engine. I already took out the speed sensor from the top because that's where I'm gonna fill the fluid. Also to inspect it and inspect the wiring. Usually these pins right here, any sort of a coolant leak or something like that, it always sort of makes its way onto this plug, corrodes it, and then your speedo doesn't work. Here's the underbody of the car. But we'll do the bolts on the bottom, and then we'll do the ones on the top. I'll put a jack under the transmission, and we'll drop her on out of here. You can tell how clean this car is. Can't find them like this no more. It's awesome. All right, let's take off this plug. That's the oil drain. It's just a 3/8 to unscrew it. Yeah, that's dark. That's dirty fluid. We don't want to race with fluid like that. I took off the speed sensor, so that does allow gravity to drain this a lot quicker. Hopefully we don't find anything we don't want to see in this oil. And then I'll drain the engine oil as well. It should be just a 17mm bolt. It's crazy how close this sits. Look at that. These has port mounts. The axle sits like right on the subframe. It's crazy. Just a little bit of clearance. So I got pretty much everything disconnected. Trying to disconnect the axles. The other one came out with no issues. Yes, I do the passenger side axles. So I take off the half shaft and slide it all out. This side though, I got the 32 off and I can't get it to budge. So I ended up removing the tie rod, ended up removing the upper control arm. I slid the whole hub over, but it still wasn't enough for the whole axle to come out of the transmission. So now I gotta try to air hammer right here into the shaft to try to get it moving. All right, so got the transmission off. I was gonna do the whole thing today, but ran into an issue. You know, even though it's a completely clean car, California, everything, whoever put this axle in must have not cleaned up the splines before they put the new axle. So they probably didn't clean the hub and just rammed the axle through with the nut. And I tried everything to get it off. I tried air hammering it. I tried hitting it with a hammer. I heated it a little bit, but I only wanted to heat it a little bit, not too much, because I don't want to mess up that wheel bearing. I saw that wasn't working, and I can't get the nut off on the lower control bolt, which is what I usually do, and I did that on the other side. But it looks like something happened here where the stud and the nut grinded itself down. So yeah, in order for me to take that off, I would have to grind the rest of this nut off. And, you know, I would have to have a new ball joint, but also to press the ball joint out, you gotta have the axle out. So it would be a whole nother job, but this ball joint does need to get replaced regardless. So in this situation, what you need to do is just disconnect the whole control arm. So disconnect the control arm from the sway bar mount and disconnect it here from the subframe. You could keep that top bolt on, disconnect it from the tie rod, and just pull the whole axle with the control arm and everything out. As for the transmission and the clutch, here it is. So here's the bearing. As you could tell, see all that orange on it. Orange means metal on metal. That's what that means, okay? Hopefully the transmission is fine. It felt okay, but this bearing is shot. So not too sure what kind of a bearing this is, but you can hear it. It should not be this easy to spin by hand, first off. Second off, you should not be able to hear it. So that bearing is destroyed. And this bearing, being destroyed, started cutting its way into the pressure plate. As you can see, let me show you here. You see the pressure plate here? I had the same thing happen on my Dodge Cummins. The throwout bearing cut itself into the pressure plate. You see the indents? So it's not just polished because it gets touched, but it's actually cutting into the pressure plate. So yeah, good diagnostics here. I will take that clutch apart, inspect it. I'm sure there's meat on it, but what's the point if something like that goes bad? So you know, always make sure when you install these, you install them properly. You're supposed to put just a little bit of grease here, but you gotta sand this down. You gotta clean it. Just a little bit of grease so this bearing doesn't get stuck. Because when I tried moving the fork by hand before I took this off, it only moved a little bit. So when you hit the clutch, this fork does that. It presses onto that pressure plate, and that's how it releases. Well, now if it gets stuck, let's say here, and you're hitting the clutch pedal, it's never contacting the pressure plate completely, so your clutch is never really disengaged. And that's why the car will drag when you put it in gear, or you have to put it in gear while the car is off, turn it on, and then you can move. So take that apart. Let's wait for the new parts to show up. In the meantime, I'll take the seals out of the transmission because they were leaking. There was barely any oil. I don't even think there was a quart of oil, a full quart of oil in that transmission. So I don't know how it even worked in the first place, but yeah, I ordered a clutch kit, same one that I ordered for my hatch. It's making 400 horsepower and it's holding on. It's an XTD eBay one. It's holding perfectly fine. It's rated for 500. Car makes 400. It holds. I'm not having any issues. Shifts like butter. So let's wait for all those parts to come in. And then I'll do another video where I put everything back together, torque it to spec, and we go take it for a ride.